Suns fans, you know what time it is in the PHX.
Empire of the Suns.
Phoenix Suns.
The Empire of the Suns podcast is brought to you by Sonic. Drive to your nearest Sonic location and try their new Choose Any Two for $7 deal for a limited time only.
Empire of the Suns.
With the Sonic 2 for $7 deal, you get 2 iconic menu items for only $7. Choose from the foot-long quarter-pound chili cheese coney, the juicy Sonic cheeseburger, or crispy chicken sandwich. Any 2 items, any combination. You can even double up for a limited time only at Sonic.
Hello there, and welcome to the Empire of the Suns podcast. My name is Kellan Olson, joined as always by Kevin Zimmerman. Hey, man.
Howdy, howdy. Thanksgiving is upcoming. What a great time of the year for some basketball, some reunions of sorts. Did they make that so we can make this great metaphor? I don't know, but thanks, schedule guys.
I made it 7 seconds without clearing my throat or coughing and didn't hear a word because I'm stressed out about how many times I'm going to cough on this podcast.
I said some stuff about Deandre Ayton and Chris Paul coming back.
They did, yeah. We can, I guess, start with DA and go there. The Suns have won 4 games in a row. We last podcasted on Friday, I want to say.
Sounds right.
A lot of what we talked about was how the defense was looking and how it was pretty solid. It has not been as solid over these 3 games. They got into 2 shootouts with the Jazz. They won 131-128 on Friday, 140-137 in double overtime on Sunday. Bit better of a defensive performance against Portland, 120-107. There was still this stretch for the second unit in both halves where it did not look too great. But they're winning basketball games. They are stacking wins, as Chris Paul used to say. There's your Chris Paul win for you. I want to say, where do we start? But it's Kevin Durant, right?
Ooh, off the top of my head, 31 points, like 7 rebounds, like 5, 6 assists, 54% shooting?
54 from the field and 51 from 3.
Yeah.
Which is insane. He's 14 games in now. Like, this is nearing a fifth of the season, I think, if my math is right. He's just about there. And it's a pretty insane pace.
It's 54 from tray balls, OD shooting hang pulls. That's what it is. I had to look that up.
That was the most I've cringed at office messages in a while when you guys were trying to decode that in the big chat.
I'm sorry.
Sometimes you just have to go like the youths will be the youngins, and that is the end of it. And that is how I felt about Chet Holmgren's response to what Kevin Durant was doing on the basketball court. He's been incredible. I think that the 2 Jazz games, specifically the double OT one, where he just straight up carried them through that. Point Book had 15 assists on Friday, and that was more of the story, along with how great Durant was. He had 38, but then he had 39 on Sunday. And they ran everything through the double teams that he was taking. Utah just kind of waited too long to change their coverages, and I think in double OT they changed it a little bit, but it looked like more of the same throughout those periods in terms of when they were doubling and when it was coming over, and he was able to carve that up. Their spacing was really great. I think that their spacing on double teams and having the right guy one pass away is something JJ Redick brought up on his podcast as well. I think that they've gotten much better at that over the last 2 weeks. I would say the doubles on Durant, specifically that Lakers game, the second one was really rough. They've gotten much better since then, and it also helps to have Devin Booker out there as well. But this was a stretch in the season. I get these 2 games against Utah, the game against Portland, where you kind of expected them to not bounce back, but find more of a rhythm here and put some wins together. The Portland game, it felt like it should have been a 30-point win for the whole time. It just wasn't. They weren't really, I don't know what to call it anymore, stooping to your level of competition, whatever you want to call it, that they're doing in some of these games.
Or were they pressing to score too many points because they knew it was an in-season tournament game, and it's just
was in their head. Wow, look at that! What a theory.
I don't know.
I don't think that's what it was.
Probably not.
But, I think in that last possession when he called a timeout in the fourth quarter with a minute left, he was like, let's make sure to score on this possession.
Yeah.
This is going to be your guys' last try. We'll try and get an extra possession up here in the point differential and go from there. But outside of that, I think that they've been playing pretty solid basketball. I think the key is Booker and Durant continuing to stay healthy, and then we'll really start to see them find more of a form. But they've been much better with Book, and who knew? Mike Viehl had the stat earlier today where in games with Devin Booker, Yusuf Nurkic is shooting 58% from the field. Without Devin Booker, he's shooting 38% from the field. 36, excuse me. And that is the type of thing you can expect. The supporting cast is going to be much better when he's out there.
I think for me, again, they're still not doing anything super crazy on offense to me. A lot of the late game offense is really just high post again and staring down and daring people to W. And most of the time, especially with Kevin Durant's numbers right now, they are being like, yes, we will W. Yes, please, we'll do that. And I think it's just basic building blocks of, okay, we need to not just swing it once, we need to swing it 1, 2, 3 times. And in stretches, you see like the ball's pinging around, whether it's rolls with Nurk, just the momentum starting to catch on when you make one initial pass and then it starts going around after that. I think Mike D'Antoni, what did he used to call that? I don't remember. He just said the ball would have momentum or something like that.
That was before my time.
But you're starting to see that, and that is, again, like just continuity. You're not doing anything crazy, but you're taking advantage of having 2 superstars who are drawing doubles. So I think that's positive, and like you said, stacking wins right now against pretty good teams. Like I don't think Utah's as bad as their record showed. Like Portland's as bad as their record showed. Memphis probably will be as bad, but they might match up okay. We'll see on that game Friday after this Warriors game. But yeah, I mean, they are where you would expect. I do want to like kind of get to. I think I did call out the wing group Friday, and Nas Little has kind of, not that he listens to this podcast probably, but he definitely has taken, there's probably money on that, that he doesn't. But Utah series, the Portland game, he's really made a difference. Like you just see the spurts. He's not even playing that many minutes, but he's ready to come in, knock down shots immediately, cold off the bench. Just the defense, the energy. And when you go back and like I read some of the scouting stuff that we did in that draft that he came out and just other draft things, like that was always his thing, right? He was always a project, but his motor and his attention and competitiveness was always kind of like what he built his stock on, really. And you're seeing that, and I think that's positive for me because like you still look at him like people look at, you know, Bol's raw. Well, he's raw because he's standing around not knowing what to do. Nasir Little's going 100 miles per hour all the time. So you're starting to see that, but he's also starting to look like an older player now. And we'll see where that goes. Obviously, you got to see that over longer periods, bigger minutes when Frank Vogel starts trusting him more. But just wanted to kind of bring him up. I guess what have you seen from him as far as like what impact he's had, which is, to me, it's been everywhere.
Yeah, well, it's weird because Josh Okogie played really well in those first 3 games. We had the K Debates Diop stretch, and now we've got the Nas Little stretch. I'm sure that means that the Utah stretch is coming up here pretty soon at some point when he returns from injury. Left quad contusion, I believe, is the listing for him. He's still out tonight. That was something where they were doing their post-scrimmage or post-shoot-around, post-practice run with some of the guys who don't get as many minutes, and he took an injury in that segment. It doesn't seem like something that's going to be super serious, but those quad contusions, I think Cam Johnson had one a year or two, like can linger and really be a pain. So I'm glad that they're taking a precautionary approach with him, it appears, with that, and giving him some time to heal. I think that Nas has been good. I think that what they need off the bench specifically is high levels of energy, because I don't think this team plays with a lack of energy by any means, but they do need like a little bit of a spark.
An edge, a spark, yeah.
An edge more so is the way to put it. Like they really are, I think the more you watch this team, the more you realize they do need someone like that specifically. Like if you were able to get the whoever you want to put in that kind of role, like PJ Tucker or whoever.
Jay Crowder.
That kind of guy, they're missing that kind of guy. I think we were looking at Grayson Allen as someone who could potentially do that, but he's just not involved in stuff. What do you know? All those assumptions about him didn't really lead to much, and I think they just need that guy from an energy perspective. I think Goodwin is that guy as well. I think Josh is that guy. But Nas has been the one who has been the most effective so far with turning it into positive play, at least in the last week. I think that where he has to get a leg up and continue to get better is attacking closeouts and 0.5 decision making.
Yeah.
That's where K debates Diop with his cutting, and then also with that has been really good. And that's where Josh, being a guy in the system last year, got a lot better already as well. But I think defensively, he offers a lot with his size and positional versatility. I think that he has the most positional versatility of the three, just because he's a bit bigger than Josh. I'm not saying he's a better defender than Josh, but he has the best positional versatility of all those guys. And I think that there's real value in developing him long-term as well. He's on a 4-year deal. He's under contract for 3 more years. All of these guys are pretty much 1+1 guys. That's the thing about this year's run is it's a very, very small niche thought, but like, can you do this well again with minimums? Like, it was just such a high bar that they set for themselves in terms of how well they did with minimums, because the majority of these guys are going to decline and get a new offer somewhere else or re-up with the Suns and for more money. Something like that. I think there are some logistical things to look into there in terms of how possible it is for the Suns to re-up with those guys with bird rights and all that kind of stuff, but we won't go there for now, which is my point of Nas is under contract. He makes, I think it's 4 years, $28 million is the average on his deal. So there's a chance to like develop him into the wing that either comes off the bench or eventually starts for you and is that fifth guy for the rest of the Durant run, essentially. Like he could wind up being really important, and I think that they have needed that from the wings because Grayson has been remarkably consistent. I said this on the Burns and Gambo show, or Bickley and Rod I was on earlier this week. A show. And I said it's hard to think like Grayson Allen wasn't on this team going into the year because he's been incredibly important to them and they've really needed him. Like even in the game last night, it's like a couple transition buckets. He had a couple nice assists. I thought Eric Gordon had like a sneaky, good, okay game as well. When we're talking about the defense, I think he's really not stood out in a positive way on just in terms of the attention to detail on every single possession. Yeah. I think that he was good. I thought he was better. I said this. I thought pretty much everyone was better than expected defensively on the perimeter going into that weekend. And then I thought Gordon regressed a little bit. I thought Nurkic regressed a little bit. Even Allen regressed a little bit. Like there was that stretch in the second quarter where Okogie and Little were in there until I think about 2.5 minutes left in the first half, and that was very intentional from Vogel because he just wanted to see more there defensively. But you've got what you are going to get from Allen. I think Gordon is not high variability, but he is going to have those games where he just can't hit a shot. Yeah. It's just kind of how he's more streaky than you would think, I suppose. And I'll get to the center rotation in a minute, but because of that, and the lack of another guard, like you're relying on these wings to contribute not only with impact plays that don't show up on the box score, but on the literal box score as well. Like Nas having 13 points last night, that actually mattered a bit. Like those guys getting up to somewhere in the low teens, one of those guys has to find a way to get into the low teens. Not every night, but at least until Beal comes back, they're going to need that because my point on the center production is in a vacuum, we'll call it that. I think Yusuf Nurkic has been good. He's been fine. Yeah. I think Eubanks has been slightly disappointing. It's just way too extreme. Mike Vigil had the tweet 2 weeks ago. He pegged it super early and was like, is this just going to be it every game where it's either really good or really bad and there's not really any in between? And the thing about Eubanks so far is that we saw with JaVale that year that he was really, really good in the regular season. You're not asking for much out of that role on any team, but especially on these Suns teams, the reserve center. Yeah. Like you just need to finish your opportunities when you get them offensively. You need to be in the right place defensively, and you need to rebound and just not commit negative plays. Like you can't have bad turnovers and you can't have dumb fouls around the rim. And that's where someone like Biz even was good last year, I thought. Yeah. And Jock Landale was good last year. And I thought that Eubanks was the best backup big coming into the year that they've had, and he just hasn't been that so far just because the lows have been so low. The highs have been good, but last night he really struggled. And so if it's going to be this thing with the center rotation where Nurkic, he has some good games. I mean, the microcosm of him so far was that game. I thought he was rough in the first half, did not go well. Thought defensively, there was just a stretch where Malcolm Brogdon just went at him for 4 straight possessions, and all of a sudden it's a 2-point game out of nowhere. Like, that's how quickly teams can attack him. And it was a very small part of the game, and I thought defensively he was actually fine, even good. Steven had a good thread on Twitter of some of the stuff that he was doing defensively. But then in the third quarter, the ball movement gets going, and then he looks great again. Yeah. And that's the thing. He's dependent on the ball movement, and he's dependent on how the pace of the offense is going. And if it's there, he's going to be pretty impactful. If Booker is really attacking the rim, he's going to be effective. If Durant's really attacking the rim, he's going to be effective. Other than that, not so sure. So my whole point is, and I wrote this last night, you just don't think about it this way, but they have one of the worst center groupings in the league, and it's not a slight to any of those guys specifically. It's just if you look across the league, it's an incredibly deep position. We talked about this when the trade happened and how I said Nurkic isn't a top 25 center in the league. But that's because there are a lot of really good centers. Like someone like Şengün, who's having an incredible year, and who's Houston might not even be a top 10 center in the league right now. Like Jalen Duren is someone who's super exciting in Detroit. You wouldn't think of putting him up there. Robert Williams was the anchor on a finals team, and you wouldn't put him in the top 10. Gobert was someone who we didn't have in the top 10 coming into the year, but with how he looks now. Cat probably wasn't someone who was in the top 5, but now he's got to be in that conversation with how he's playing. It's an incredibly deep position, and they're just not going to get the night-to-night contributions there that a lot of other teams will. So they need their wings without Beal at the moment to step up, which is why I think what you brought up last week was important, and sort of what I'm realizing now is you have to decide at what point you're going to take what's happening for what it is. And what I mean by that is, are you willing to say at game 30, 40, 50, 60, this is what you're going to get from the centers every night? You just won't know. And so far with that, I'm not saying it's laid out and it's concrete and it's full, but I think what we've learned so far is that one of them is probably going to struggle.
Yeah.
And that's tough.
You kind of hope that they don't do it the same night, and for the most part they've gotten at least like one good. I will say they have been like at least trading off, right, where one person has at least 15-point game, the other person might struggle based on matchups. Obviously that's kind of how you just have to hang with it right now. Like Eubanks started from a place where I thought he was probably the worst rotation player early on. He's gotten better, getting rid of the bad turnovers, the moments like that where he's just throwing the ball away. And it is partially like I've probably thrown out more than 2 tweets about like, why is he running actions like stuffed in a corner out of a timeout when that's not his game? He's not Nurk. So I think maybe they could put him in better positions, and it's just hard because like those two guys are so different. It also matters how the other guys are operating around you. And so I think there's a challenge there with adjusting the play style to the center when they're obviously not the primary like people. So that might be awkward just because of how the roster is built. I guess I didn't even think of that about it until you just mentioned it. But in the Portland game, Metu got some more run like as a 5. I don't know if that was like Eubanks was struggling, whatever. I know it wasn't very long. Was it even more than 2 minutes? But like Frank is looking at stuff at the very least. Did you learn anything during those moments?
You talking about Metu?
Yeah, at the 5.
Yeah, that he's. It's funny because I didn't even. It was not a come to Jesus moment or anything, but it was like
about Chimezie Metu, it wasn't?
Yeah, sorry, but I did think of you when Ayton went to post him up, and I'm like, this is the
yeah.
Kevin's super excited at home right now, seeing U of A against USC right now, and the fact that they've played against each other and you've been there for those games before, but I think that he's already been thinking about it probably for quite a while now and been like, okay, I probably need to go with it. And that was part of why we we really hammered on, there's the word, minus the P plus the M, hammered on going through options and why you're going to need to see. Like everyone, I understand the excitement, but Udonis not playing. Nas plays well, and everyone's like, yep, Nas just took the job. And it's like, he did not.
No.
He is going to continue to go round and round the ride, just like everyone after the third game of the season was like, well, Josh is going to be the fifth starter the rest of the year. Like, we're gonna be on the ride for a while now, and part of that ride, I think, is going to have to include looking at Metu. I think if Bull is showing enough progress in practice, he will get looks. If he continues not to, I think that's a good indicator. What I wanted to see from Metu was how he looks in drop coverages, and the smart thing that Vogel did was like, no, let's just switch everything. He's probably better on the perimeter defending a guard than that's what I interpret it to be. It's like, we'd rather have him just switching everything because it gives them a different look, but also it's going to provide something that more caters to what Metu Chimezie is probably better at this stage in his career, because that was what I said on either this podcast or another one, where I was like, I don't know, man, I need to see him for like 200 minutes in the drop coverage before I decide that he can be your backup center. So, but if you're just switching when he's out there, that's great, and he's probably the best shooter of the three. I think, again, preseason, just watching him before games is what we're going off of here. There's not really a sample size in the league, whereas Nurkic shot well last year in NBA games. But with that being said, I do think that it's good for them to look into it, and probably should look into it again tonight. I was going to ask him, Vogel, yesterday about going small, but I'm probably going to ask tonight instead, because they are a team, Golden State, that typically does go small. We've seen KD and KBD as the front court. I think we could see some of that either tonight or see Metu again tonight. And it's going to fluctuate. I was looking at the numbers, and a good sign for what we're talking about, and just like an indicator that things aren't really going as bad as we're thinking. We're not even saying they're going bad, but if you're reading into what we're saying and worrying, their net rating with Nurkic out there has been 5, and it's been 3.6 with Eubanks. And if you look at on-off numbers, when they're off the court, the Suns have a 3.0 net rating when Eubanks is off the court, and then when Nurkic is off the court, they're at a 1.4. So there aren't any really too many variations. The offense is a little better with Nurkic out there, and the defense is a little bit better when Eubanks is out there, which is about what we expected. Like, they go from like a below average defense to a borderline top 10 defense when Eubanks is out there, which makes sense based on what we've seen from the two of them as players. But it's going to be interesting to see how they continue to evolve and grow into what you're saying. I am curious who starts to get cemented in, because like Josh is going to keep playing, I would like to think. Yeah. And he's earned it. But beyond that is like, okay, is Nas the first wing off the bench, or does it depend on the matchup? Like, I'm thinking Josh probably starts tonight because Steph Curry's playing on the other team, but we'll see.
I think it'll be intriguing for me because, like, I know most coaches want to lock down like an 8-man, 9-man rotation if you're going to go long, especially for the playoffs. But to me, this roster is built where everyone except for the big three really does need to do piecemeal. Like, I think people forget, like, they got the guys on the min contracts because they're not top 6 players, probably not top 7 on most teams. If you look at Watanabe, for example, like, he's an elite shooter. We know that. He tries on defense. We know that. Go look at his numbers last year. He maybe played 10, 15 minutes a game. He didn't play a lot. And then when you watch him against the Lakers and LeBron just puts him under the rim and just bullies him for 2 straight minutes, and he just has to leave because, like, I know it's LeBron, but they're just, like, they all have their flaws is what I'm getting at there. Same with Eubanks, same with Nurk and to lesser degrees, but same with Metu. Like, he had minutes on a really good team on Sacramento last year, but why isn't he getting more? Well, there are reasons.
Why was Alex Len playing over him?
Yeah. So that's what you have to deal with, and I think, like, that's where it's, you either need one of or two of them to just take a leap. That's why Little's youth and his age and his upside, he should be one of those guys. KBD probably too, but, like, that's just a reminder of why we're here, why they created this roster this way. And by the way, I don't know if you want to go deep on Ayton and Chris Paul and their time on not Suns, but there's a reason why the Suns do look smart right now trading DA, even if he was having an awesome season in Portland. Like, the Grayson ad, the Nas ad, like, you just needed bodies, and that's a couple guys who are on non-minimum contracts who are like for good reason. Very much needed on this team.
The mystery box had Grayson Allen, according to, I think, Woj's story that went behind the scenes of how the trade went down.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah.
Good for them. That worked out well. Sometimes the mystery can't be fun, but that one was that one was fun. Yeah, we can talk about that for a couple minutes. I do want to say we often, if you're new to the podcast, we often are like, yeah, Devin Booker's awesome, and then we kind of move on because we've run out of ways to talk about how awesome he is. We're not there with KD yet, and we're not there with Booker ever, but I want to wait. It's been 6 games for Book. I think there's a cool conversation to have in terms of we talk about whose team it is and who has been better and all that kind of stuff. I think we can wait a couple more games. Maybe it's a conversation next week, the week after. If we're looking at the MVP case, who has it right now? I think that...
I don't know.
I don't know. It's probably a slight edge to Durant, but that's because he was out there the whole time so far.
Yeah.
Probably is why I feel that way. So we'll wait and see. Yeah, DA was here. They ran most of the offense through him, at least in the first quarter. That hasn't been the case for them this season. They haven't run as much offense for him. I don't really know why, but they haven't.
His
post-ups per game are down, and Billups said pregame he's not really the type of guy where you throw it to him on the block 20 times a game and see it, and I understand that, but at the same time, they don't really have better options at this point. You might as well turn someone into the focal point of the offense and see where it goes, and that's what they did. And he looked good. He was using his dribble. He scored 12 points, and then he kind of disappeared for the rest of the game, which can happen not only for him, but can happen for any guy as talented as him on a team that is that bad. Book was asked after the game about playing against him. I didn't even catch this when he said it at first. I was just kind of nodding along because I've heard different versions of what he said forever, and then I realized after Gerald's post went nuts, I was like, oh, yeah, that is something that I guess means something. He ended his answer by saying, my challenge to him is to do that every night, basically, which is play extra hard, I believe. And Book, with what we all noticed as well, which is that he was going hard in the first quarter and was playing hard, and he got Book on a layup, blocked him from behind. Book hit a pull-up on him. They were talking a little bit, chatting a little bit, to be expected. And I think that Monty, Book, Chris, all those guys have said so many different versions of what we heard Book say, but they just haven't said it as directly in like a call-out fashion because he was their teammate. But now that he's not their teammate anymore, you can take some liberties, I guess. I don't know what to call it exactly, but just speak a little more freely. And he said what has been on everyone's mind for a while now, and I know there are people who believed that it wasn't an issue for guys like Booker and Chris and Monty, but knowing the competitors that all those guys are and knowing how you've got an ultra-talented guy who doesn't play the same way every night, how could it not drive them absolutely insane at the maximum, or at the very minimum at least irritate them?
Yeah.
So look, it doesn't surprise me at all. He knows better than anybody because he's seen every game that Deandre's played in his career prior to the trade. He's the one guy who can have that claim. There are people in the front office who have been here for that whole time, but he's been on the sideline there. Him and Jay, like the equipment guy, Jay Gaspar, who's been around forever, who's a legend in his own right in the staffing there over the years. Like they've seen it, and we know what to expect at that point. I don't know if it was a surprise for people to hear Book say that, and I know that it caught some viral stuff, and I think it was Network, one of our favorite Twitter followers, was like, yeah, they hated that guy, and I don't know if they hated him, but they were frustrated by him, to say the very least. And if that was breaking news to you, it was breaking news to you, but it certainly wasn't to me.
To me, it was... I take their view on DA, like, the amount of, like, care that Booker had for him, just, like, even away from the court stuff. I don't know if you would agree. It seemed like he cared about him genuinely as a person, thought he was a good teammate. And so you can put up with the play, I think, when you don't absolutely hate the guy, right? Like, it's like...
He's not a buzzkill to be around.
Yeah, like, he's helpful to us. I understand his value. As a person, he's a great person or whatever around the team. But that allows you to kind of accept, like, the bad play, I think, or the lack of effort, or whatever you want to phrase it, for a longer period of time. And even in the last year's playoffs, like, I think we should give credit to Chris Paul for, like, not just making DA good, but, like, putting thought and effort into it, right? Because, like, he saw his value. He saw DA and his value were linked last year because Chris doesn't have it in age, and they legit took over playoff games, like the two of them, in pick and rolls. And so I think my grand view on it is those guys tried their best with him and helped him. And I think right now we're seeing just one, when the Suns didn't have a point guard that year with DA's rookie year, like I think we had so many conversations about not being able to throw entry passes and all this stuff, which is true. Like Portland's going through the same thing, but even if DA's better now as a player, even regardless of his flaws, like it's just harder for bigs to get touches when you don't have, they legit, like Brogdon should be that guy who's trying to figure out answers and working with DA, but for whatever reason, like they're just not running pick and rolls. I don't know if Brogdon, if I think about it, he's probably not the best pick and roll player. Like he's a really good point guard and ball mover, but he's just not like that guy with the shake. So I don't know. It's an unfortunate situation with him, with DA, like hitting the reality of, oh, I don't have guys to find me and set me up. And even if he doesn't need setting up, which I think he does, but just the simple throw the ball into the high post or low post with that guy, like there's just no one who can even do that regardless of what you think about him. So it's I think a reality check for DA maybe.
No, we're past that.
No, but I mean like for like what he is, like they're just not built to do that. And then whether that's his fault or not, like, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't matter what his draft stock is.
Reality checkable. Does that make sense?
I think it's a reality check for like everyone around him then.
Okay.
And us and not him then.
Okay.
I mean it like maybe we should appreciate what Chris Paul and Book did for him more.
I didn't mean that as a dig, by the way. It's
Yeah.
just, it has been so clear what has needed to happen for so long now.
Yeah.
It hasn't. So like, I don't think anything at any point is going
I don't know if the effort thing's going to be fixed at all.
not change, but get through.
Yeah, that's
if
true.
it was going to get through, it was going to get through in a terrific situation for him with one of the best point guards of all time and a coach that
for some reason I had
working with him at the start before there was a strife at some point.
For some reason I had higher expectations about just like his
how he was going to play this year.
shot volume even.
Yeah,
I don't know if that was unrealistic.
I never said it anywhere because it's like it's part of this whole thing that we're now out of, thankfully, the discourse on him. But I didn't think it was going to go well. It hasn't gone well yet. It's just I think it was Vicini, the friend of the pod, I guess we can call him, who does great stuff, and he was just tweeting about how like Ayton's effort levels are at like an all-time low right now when you watch him. And this was just more what I was talking about last year, where last year and then in the playoffs especially, like the levels of disconnect from him on the floor were just crazy high. And you're seeing clips from the game last night where Shaedon Sharpe is running around a screen and DA's not even like
making contact.
He's in motion and setting a screen, but you can't it looks like someone took an animation. So video game thing.
Yeah.
They do mocap. They have people like go in the suits and like do the thing. He looked like someone who was doing the mocap animation for setting a screen, but wasn't like the artificial intelligence part of his computer player wasn't picking up where the defense was, the spot where he was supposed to set the screen on it, and that whole thing. That's what it looked like, and that's what it has looked like for him.
It was number one on Shackton. That was from the Utah game.
It's a different game.
He was doing it again, yeah.
And that's been a thing for a while now, where it's like it's just such a minor thing to complain about that it sounds like you're being a brat and you're being biased when you said it, that I've never really brought it up. I don't know, but I hope he figures it out, and I hope more so that he develops defensively, because I think that if it's going to happen for him, he's going to be a really good defensive player, and then the offense is just going to be
what it is,
which is hopefully he's using his dribble. If he is, he can still be a great individual scorer in this league. If he's not using his dribble, then he won't really have much of a chance. And the thing about using his dribble is that it's become extremely predictable now with how low he brings the ball down. So people are stripping him all the time. The Suns schemed around that. They knew exactly what the tells were because they had him around and know the weaknesses within his game. But with that being said, that is the path to him becoming better. Chris is here. And DA, and the thing is, like, he's been fine. He hasn't been bad.
Yeah.
Portland, he's just been fine.
Yeah.
And it's like he's just not a max center. He's not a top 10 or 15 center. He's fine. And when he's
his activity's
in a better
there,
situation, when he's in a better situation and he's maximized as much as he possibly can by his teammates and their level of play to help him, just in the way we were talking about how Nurkic is better with Booker, Ayton's going to be better with even Scoot, who's a rookie figuring his own things out.
Yeah.
So you can't really judge him right now at all, but I'm just saying that I think he's going to be fine and average for a center until things get better in Portland, and then we'll see from there. But in terms of him making the steps on his own, I think we're past that at this point.
Yeah.
Chris in Golden State's been going fine so far. The biggest problem for them is Klay can't really move, and then they've gotten bad Wiggins for the most part to start the year. I watched their game against Houston the other night, and Klay actually had a pretty good game. It was his first 20-plus point game of the year. We're talking about Klay Thompson, who is going to be in the Hall of Fame and is a really, really good scorer. Like again, the Grayson Allen, Eric Gordon thing, shooter. Klay can score. Yes, he's never been much of a creator off the dribble, but with that being said, he can still score. And he was being guarded by Jabari Smith Jr., and every time he dribbled, Jabari either ripped him or blocked his shot pretty much, or Klay passed out. And he hit open threes. He got open in the ways that he does. And then it was a good Wiggins game the game before against OKC. He was good in that game as well. Kuminga is their third leading scorer right now, and Kuminga hasn't necessarily taken huge steps forward. And then Chris is someone who's just trying to get comfortable in what his role is, which is going to be, I probably score in the single digits more often than not, but I'm going to give you 6 to 12 assists a game in these types of minutes with one turnover, and I'm going to be in the right spot everywhere. He's shooting incredibly well on catch and shoot threes right now. His pull-up numbers are atrocious.
This is like last year, right?
Yeah. Well, I watched it back, and especially with this kind of sample size, he's taking 4 or 5 heaves. There's been 4 or 5 or end of shot clock. He's trying to create a shot, but it is at that point where he's always been someone where his shot was unguardable for being 6 feet tall, which never made sense, but it was because of the way he tilted and the way that he shot over people, like with the arc of his shot. And it's at the point now where we're starting to see those funky jumpers we talked about 2 years ago, where we were like, was there like a major shoulder injury here and he had to change the form on his shot? He's still having those where he changes the form of his shot a little bit and you can just notice it, because he needs to get more arc on his shot or he needs to get around the defender. There's still a couple too many of those because the amount of separation he's getting at this age just isn't what it used to be.
It's like the archers when they just bend.
Yeah, it's weird. It's kind of weird, but he's been fine, and I think more so he is the ultimate guy out of everyone we've talked about so far on the Suns DA, where once everything gets going around him, and hopefully for their sake, Wiggins gets back to the all-star starter. That was a weird thing where he just got in, but he was an all-star, all-star caliber player. If he gets back there and they get Draymond back and he looks more or less like Draymond did, like he didn't last postseason and like Klay didn't last postseason, that's why I'm really worried about the Warriors and their status as a contender. But guess what? Steph is still arguably the best player in the world right now. He's in that 5-6 player discussion. So I think that Chris has been fine so far, and what I wrote about on the site and ended with, I wrote about him and Deandre together, so naturally people are going to make their assumptions and read it and be like, oh, he's higher on Chris. And it's like, well, Chris has a much, much lesser role. His role is way smaller. He's the backup point guard. He plays 30 minutes a game, but he's not one of the... He's probably, the third most important player on that team? Fourth, maybe? And Deandre has to be the guy on Portland now. His role has only increased. So those two kind of flipped in their responsibilities. So naturally, especially for how experienced Chris is and how he's always made it work everywhere, he's going to look like he's been better. Defensively, guess what?
Yeah.
The minutes with him and Steph, they've been good so far defensively. I don't know what's happening there. Is that small? Is that sample with shooting? Are they not shooting? I didn't really dive too much deeper into it, but watching the Rockets game, they made it work. Steph's guarding guards. There were your patented Jalen Green is trying to get by him, and just immediately jets by him, and Chris doesn't stand a chance. There were a couple of
Don't post up Chris, though.
But I still do believe what I wrote, which is that he still has it, because there were nights where he was just pissed, and he's like, I'm just going to be all defense 9-time Chris Paul guy tonight for the most part. But his legs, it's just how much can he use them. But Anthony Slater wrote a good thing on The Athletic, which is something you don't think about I didn't think about until you see it on the court, where you're like, oh yeah, Steph looks pretty good right now in the fourth quarter. His legs look great. And then you think oh yeah, because Chris is bringing the ball up a lot.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is just they're surviving on defense. And I know he has started some games and all that, where you have to rely on him. And most of the time he's probably not getting the toughest matchup, but there's enough evidence where it's like, oh yeah, like people are afraid to dribble around that man. One, it doesn't matter if his legs can't move at all. He has really good hands. And two, like he can hold up just physically against bigger dudes for being whatever height he is officially. So that's my biggest thing is like they're getting away with it. I don't even know if getting away is the right word because I think he's legit still a pretty decent defender where you can't just outright exploit him. And that was my biggest thing. Like, if you're going to play those guys a lot of minutes together, then he has to do that. He's holding that up and still being just, I should go look at, like, his assist rate because he's not playing very many minutes, but he's still at, 7-8 assists, I think. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it's insane that he's finding ways to still be really impactful. And again, if he gets his legs under him a little bit, I would expect the jump shooting numbers to come around. And once other guys actually start hitting shots, then he's going to have more spot up opportunities if he's doing that well just as a spot shooter. So we'll see.
Can I rant about the in-season tournament before we go?
Yeah.
Okay, the Suns are 2-1. They have a point differential of plus 13. The tiebreaker for the wild card spot is most likely going to be point differential. Right now, they are competing with probably the Denver Nuggets, who are plus 9. They've got 1 game left. The Rockets, who are minus 3. They have 2 games left. The Kings, who are 2-0, plus 16. Timberwolves, 2-0, plus 10. Warriors, 1-1, minus 1. This is likely going to come down to a few 3-1 teams for that one sole wildcard spot, and it's going to come down to point differential. You know what would be handy, Kevin?
What?
Is knowing how many points you have to get in order to get there. You know which team is not going to get the honor of doing that?
The Suns.
The Suns, because they finished before everyone.
Yeah.
You know why you want to be European soccer so bad, brother? They do all of the games at the same time, so no one can know. So there's no competitive advantage or disadvantage. So you sit here and you make your little West Group A's, West Group B's, and you want to be the Champions League so bad. Brother, you got to sacrifice your schedule a bit. I'm sorry. You guys do it on game 82 now. Why can't you do it on this Friday or on this Tuesday? So to be clear, again, with what I'm saying, I mentioned all of those teams that the Suns are competing with. They play in Memphis against the Grizzlies at 5 Eastern on Friday. The Nuggets don't tip that night until 8 Eastern. So the game's going to end, and them and Houston are both going to know more so Denver is like, okay, if Denver's up 10 and they need to catch the Suns by 26 points, then they have the advantage of knowing whether they should go for it or not. And then the other teams don't even finish playing until Tuesday. So Houston plays on Tuesday. Minnesota plays on Tuesday. Golden State and Sacramento both play on Tuesday. So all of these teams get an advantage. So again, if you really want this to matter, if you really want it to be like European soccer, like Silver is so obsessed with, then do it right. You did it wrong. And now I sound like the bitter Suns guy where it's like, oh, the Suns are getting screwed. I'm not doing that. I'm just saying your tournament is inept, my guy.
Yeah.
It's inept.
Inept. Oof. That was a good rant. That's something that we didn't think about because I think we were all like, okay, how does this work? Group play. How do you get into the bracket? Okay, point differential matters. It takes 2 games to even care about point differential. Like, we didn't even really look at it until the Blazers game when they were at a net 0. So they win by 13. They're plus 13 now. And suddenly it's like, oh, okay, now we have interest. But it's like, yeah, it's...
I didn't make that clear enough. So for non-soccer fans...
There's like 3 full days between the sets of games we care about. And it's just
for
weird.
Non-soccer fans, all of the games take place at the same time.
Yeah.
For those kinds of situations where goal differential could matter, but it's more so what I'm thinking about is the last day of the regular season where there's teams in the Premier League table which are going to finish equal on points, and it does come down to goal differential, so that way they can't know exactly which way they need to go and such, and there isn't an advantage that other teams
at least make it the same day. Like, I understand there are TV windows, and if every game's playing at once, you're not maximizing it, I guess, is why I would assume. But it's happening in college.
No, it's just all about money. It's like you want me to care about this like it's a real tournament, and that's the thing is like since we haven't talked about it on this podcast, there's an inherent tradition to winning trophies in European soccer that really matters. Like, it really, really matters to some of these smaller clubs. Like, when I used to be a Newcastle United fan, like, they hadn't been to a final in, like, so many years, let alone won a trophy. So when they advanced to the quarterfinals of the FA Cup, we're like, oh my God, is this the year they're going to do it? Meanwhile, they're going to finish 13th in the Premier League, do nothing, and no one cares, but it's this huge moment for them.
Yeah.
The NBA Cup is going to be something people get mocked for if they celebrate it. It's a joke. It's going to be a joke. It's unfortunately a joke. I wish it mattered, but it doesn't matter because there's no tradition. All of those trophies in England, in Spain, in France, Italy, everywhere, they have so much tradition behind them that they actually matter. Now, you could say that this is the NBA's attempt of building that tradition, but they're not aware of their audience. They might think they're aware of their audience, but they're not. They're just going to sit here and make fun of everyone. Like, when whoever celebrates with the trophy, like Jimmy Butler or whoever, you know, like, they're going to get made fun of for looking at it or, like, taking it seriously or kissing it. Like they're going to be, little bro's cat kissing it like it's the Larry O.B. Chill out, bro. You know what I'm saying? That's what it's going to be. So all of this was here to create a new tradition, be like European soccer or whatever. No, it was about money, because the TV schedule I'm talking about right now, that's what matters to them the most, which is the money of that scheduling and the $4.6 million they would lose if they did all these games at the same time or whatever. You know what I mean?
It is funny because, like, I understood, like, last night against the Blazers, we knew, okay, and Friday it'll happen again. Suns fans will be like, we want them to blow them out. And you'll say, how much do you want them to blow them out by? I don't know, a lot. And the Suns will be like, should we pull our starters yet? Because we still would like to blow them out by more, but do we know if we need to? And then Frank Vogel will do an in-between where he pulls KD and Book and then keep, like, some of the other starters in to, like, maybe score. And then we're all unsure. And then we'll wait 3 days to find out whether it matters. And then when they didn't score that last basket, it might really matter. And then we'll be like, well, he pulled KD and Book in the Portland game. They could have gotten free point.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to say is, like, yeah, it's just, like, very ambiguous what we're trying to do, which is every single basketball game. Like, we should beat the other team. Yes. Do you want to beat them by a lot? Sure.
So it's their third game in 4 days, and they fly across the country either later tonight on Wednesday or on Thanksgiving. They fly across the country to play Memphis. Then it's in New York against the Knicks on Sunday, the Raptors in Toronto on Wednesday, and then they're back home and they play a back-to-back against Denver and Memphis. So third game in 4 days, like, it's not ideal. But like you're saying, situationally, you would like to be aware of it. Vogel's saying it every time they go to the locker room. He's talking about in-season tournament, this and that. So I think they care a little bit, and I think they want to go for it if they can. But it's like they don't even know how they can potentially go for it, because, like, okay, I guess we have to get it as high as possible. But, like, am I supposed to play these guys 42 minutes now when we're winning by 26, but we should try and win by 47? Like, I don't know.
Legit, the biggest prize in all this is, and I think Dame was the one, if I'm not mistaken. He's like, oh, yeah, like, the guys who are on, like, two-way deals, minimum contracts, like,
which is the majority of the Suns roster.
Yeah, so actually they have a lot to play for. Is it like $500,000 or something per player?
This is life-changing money for guys.
It's a lot
like
of money.
For Saban Lee, Azubuike. Like, it matters to them for sure.
So that stuff is going to be, like, the biggest prize, which, like, the effort's going to be there. We're not questioning that, but just the format just is like, I don't know. There's a giant, the NBA page is nice. It's a giant standings page that makes sense. That's the nicest part of it so far for me. I enjoyed reading it easily.
I got to go be on the radio. Bye.
Oh, okay. Rivalry weekend in football. Speaking of trophies where things happen and maybe other teams winning or losing matter.
Play important games against each other and then I'll care more. I'm sorry. I'm that guy. I'm that cranky old guy. We have bigger rivalries with, like, Duke, UCLA, basketball. Like, come on. You know what I'm saying?
I'm saying the Pac-12 title games on the... Pac-12 title games on.
I wasn't invested in football. I'm sorry. I can admit it too. I'll be a bandwagoner. I'll be like, yeah, let's go. Once we make the Rose Bowl or whatever it is, I don't know.
He doesn't know anything.
I gotta go on the radio.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Bye.